During slavery, especially around the slave trade, is when the idea of colorism started to form with Afro-Latinos. Slavery supported colorism because it was seen that those with fair skin obtained more privileges than those with darker skin. The article Just Knowing the Cure by Ya Azibo also takes into consideration about the science of race and how if an Afro-Latino person is closer to being and looking white, the superior they are according to social Darwinism. The Afro-Latino community was involved with colorism for generations, thinking that being white was the better option, and it created many problems within the community. Nicknames that were used to identify people by color are still used today, such as morena or mulata. These words put the Afro-Latino community in boxes based on what their skin color is. In addition to color, during the time of slavery, the words were used more based on what color your parents were and where they came from. According to the documentary Black in Latin America, one Latin country that still uses those words to identify themselves is Brazil. Because colorism has been carried on through centuries, many Latinx generations up to this day still experience the effect of colorism. Parents and grandparents would often give their children these nicknames to describe how they look like, but also how far away they think they are from their culture, just because they're mixed. Up to this day, many Latino families still believe that being closer to looking white means that you are powerful and more attractive. The main problem is that colorism has an effect in the Latinx community, especially with Afro-Latinos dealing with light skin privileges and hair types.
One's hair has always been important within the Latinx community, due to it being one of the first characteristics other people see. With that being said, the terms pelo malo and pelo lacio have tormented and affected the lives of many women and men for centuries. The literal translation of pelo malo is bad hair, and pelo lacio means hair that is straight, sleek, and appears to be tamed. Such terms stem from the influence of Eurocentric beauty standards, which focuses on European culture, including things such as being slender, lighter-skinned, and of course, having straight hair. There's an extra emphasis on having pelo lacio within the Latinx community, where women spend hours in salons straightening, perming, and manipulating the natural texture of their hair. In other words, they are on the quest for the whitest version of their hairs, as David Lopez, a celebrity hairstylist, has stated previously. Many women, like myself, have felt the need to change their hair due to one's culture encouraging it and defining straight hair as being beautiful, without really knowing how psychologically damaging such encouragement was. Being able to change one's hair was seen as a way of gaining freedom under slavery, erasing their African roots and potentially receiving better treatment during colonial Latin American days. Pressure to change one's hair was also seen as important due to how families wanted to present themselves to the world and attempts to fit within the norms that have already been established with.
Privileges of light-skinned Latinx members. Jessica Vasquez's article deals with different aspects of life within the Latinx community. She focuses on the flexible ethnicity idea that allows third-generation Mexicans to basically consider themselves white and renounce their cultural and historical lineage at will when it is convenient for them. Many third-generation Mexicans display a flexible ethnicity, or the ability to navigate two different social worlds, that is, mainstream U.S. culture and a Mexican-oriented community. Many claim that they did not experience public discrimination or the presumption that they are lower class because they did not look stereotypically Mexican. Light-skinned Latinx members are not perceived as threatening to society as their darker-skinned counterparts are.
Other privileges of light-skinned Latinx members include lighter members making more money than dark-skinned Latinos. In a 2003 study mentioned in the article of Everyday Feminism, it briefly talks about how Latinos who identified as white made about $5,000 more a year than Latinos who described themselves as black. In addition, in the same study, it was also reported that fair-skinned Latinos had lower unemployment rates, which also resulted in lower rates of poverty. In a 2005 study that looks at colorism among Latinx members, it was reported that light-skinned Latinos live in more affluent, rich neighborhoods compared to black Latinos, where they were reported to live in more racially segregated neighborhoods with poorer resources available, as well as lower property values with little exposure to non-Latino white people. Finally, in another article which talks about colorism and how this ideology governs whiteness among Latin America, discusses the term branqueamiento, which means whitening, and how achieving this ideology can transform your social status and give you more opportunity to succeed in society by marrying a light-skinned partner or becoming rich and famous. In other words, whiter is brighter, which roots the idea that in Latin America there is this need to become socially white in order to achieve greatness in society, otherwise you can't move on in the social hierarchy.
How to end colorism in the Latinx community. First, it begins with parenting. Teaching children about race and skin color at a young age, and complimenting and reinforcing a child's beauty. Teaching children at a young age to embrace and feel confident with their skin color or hair type can help to end colorism in the Latinx community. For instance, when it comes to playing with toys, buying children diverse groups of dolls can help to demonstrate that their skin color and hair type is normal and acceptable. Giving a child only white, straight-haired dolls would reinforce the belief that lighter skin is better and more desired. Yet providing children with dolls that look like oneself can validate their appearance as beautiful. Constantly complimenting and reinforcing that a child is beautiful can teach a child to love their appearance, learning to love their hair type or skin color. For example, instead of trying to change a child's curly hair texture, parents should embrace the beauty of their curls. In the Latinx community, it may seem as though curly hair is bad, as it is often referred to as pelo malo, yet instead of making these kind of remarks and making the child seem like their appearance is wrong, parents should teach them to love how they look. Another step to end colorism in the Latinx community is to incorporate and support Latinx studies in school by educating students about Latinx history to diminish stereotypes and appreciate the diverse and various Latinx cultures. Latinos and the public should be educated and taught about Latinx history. Personally, in school I was never taught about Latinx history. We would briefly talk about Hispanic Heritage Month and have an event once a year called Noche de Latina, but other than that, we have not been educated on Latinx history in school curriculums. We must begin by dismantling the mainstream stereotype and myth of Hispanic identity and understand that all Latinos are different. We can begin teaching by discussing the racial spectrum and understand the many different Latino identities and the oppressions they have faced. For instance, teaching students about Afro-Latinos, since they seem to fail to fit into stereotypical Latino appearance and struggle to fit into the stereotypical image of fair skin and straight hair.